Thank you very much for the wonderful and very friendly presentation. It's a big pleasure. It's a big honor for me to be here with you today. And yes, I was never to Bangladesh, so that's still one of those spots in my world map that I really need to see one day. Let's hope that traveling will be easy and will be possible very soon again. I think we are on a very good way now, not all over the world, but in many countries. So give us another some months maybe, and I think it will, I hope it will be safe again. So I brought something here with me, which is the topic projects as profit centers. Has been one of my big topics for the last 4 or 5 years now. I think it's a topic that we are completely missing out at PMI. It's a topic that has grown in significance very, very much all around the world. I know some countries where major parts of the economy, of the national economy, meanwhile, depends on how they do customer projects for companies, for customers in other countries. So let's talk about that. What does it mean when we do a project for a paying customer? Whenever you have questions, please write them into the chat. I will not be able during this session to read the chat. I will read it later, of course, but I will be too much focused on what we are doing here. But our friends from the PMI Bangladesh chapter will read it. And if there's something that is urgent, they will just ask me during the session. We will also have a Q&A session at the end. So you will have, I hope, most of your questions being answered. Actually, we had some sessions with this topic now where I was not able to answer all questions. There were too many. No one has talked about this topic before. So when someone starts, then the number of open questions gets very, very high. So here a bit, some details about me. I have 4 children. 2 of them are adult, 2 of them are a bit younger. My family today is on the way to cinema. They just left, I think, on the way to cinema, and daddy has to stay at home and do some work on Saturday, but okay. And I have 2 children who are grown up meanwhile. You may be aware of one of them, that's Lehmann, who is also a trainer, and I think a quite well-known trainer now in the more agile environment. She's one of my children as well, and she has 2 children, which are, of course, then my grandchildren. Some other information about me. I don't want to stay here too long because you're not here to learn something about Oliver Lehmann. You are here to learn something about projects as profit centers. Maybe one more thing. I've been with PMI since 1998. That's very, very long. I was the president of the PMI Southern Germany chapter, 2013 to 2018. This chapter does no more exist. By that time, we had 4 chapters in Germany, and there was a process to unify them. So today, there is a PMI Germany chapter. I was one of those people starting the process. I was no more with the team when they finished it. It was done by some other people, and they did a very, very good job. But I was a chapter president as well. And I think we did some very important work, not only for the chapter, but also for PMI. I have an own association founded in 2019. The reason was that the topic of project business management does not really have a standing inside PMI. And I felt a bit alone at PMI to talk about project business. So we founded the Project Business Foundation 2019. It's now 1.5 years old, a bit less than that. And it is a bit older, but it's active, been active since February 2020. So we are focusing very much on the topic, and I hope you will agree it is a fascinating topic. Something about the work that I do outside of training. I wrote 2 books, one of them obviously Project Business Management, and a big number of papers with a focus on project business management. One of them I think will be published this weekend. I submitted it last week, and I think it will be online over the weekend at Project Management World Journal, at the magazine Project Management World Journal. If any one of you says, hey, Oliver, that's an interesting topic, and I have something to talk about here, I have something to tell that you are not talking about, but that's also part of this business. I can write some stories down. I have ideas, I have concepts, I have methods that we use in the organization. Please feel free to approach me, and we could make a paper out of that as well. I need a paper every month, every other month. So if someone wants to contribute, I have a series there of papers. If someone wants to contribute something, then you're absolutely welcome here. So this is what I want to talk with you about today. First of all, what is the difference between an internal project and a customer project, or as some call it, customer-facing project? I more and more prefer the term customer project. It's not just that it's customer-facing, that it looks in a different direction. Now it's a different type of project that we're doing here. Then I'd like to talk with you about the main challenges, and I have something here where we can find solutions. And again, I'm not saying that I'm the know-it-all guy in this field. There is still so much to explore and so much to develop in this field. So everyone who says, hey, that's a great topic and I want to be part of that, would be welcome here as well. And of course, as I said, I will be prepared at the end to answer your questions, of course. Last time we had a meeting where we had, I think, an hour with questions. Q&As. It was very, very long. I'd like to introduce you to a lady, Clara Loft. She is a project manager and a very normal project manager. Maybe apart from one thing, she knows the value of her work. Actually, that's where project manager problems often begin. They don't know the value of their work, and organizations don't value their work. So it's often a two-way road. No, she knows what she's doing for the organization. That's a big step forward for many project managers already. She successfully manages internal projects for her employer, strategic initiatives, change to the organizations, new products, new services, building teams that are going cross-functional across the organization, and she delivers in time. That's the typical topics of internal projects. Internal project means the organization that does the project is the same organization that consumes the results. It's all done inside the protective walls of one organization. Her specialty is cross-functional projects. Cross-functional means we have a functional organization here. We have functional units inside this organization. And now she does projects that go cross-functional over here. We call this sometimes a matrix organization. I could give you another webinar for 3 hours to just talk about matrix organizations. It is one of the big difficulties in internal projects to work in such a matrix, because for the team members, you are in a matrix, you are a servant of two masters. You are at the same time an employee in a department and a team member in the project. And what happens if the project manager tells you something and the department manager tells you something different? The project manager tells you, hey, I need you next week in, nice place in the world, I need you in Hawaii. Yeah, in Hawaii, what a beautiful place this is. Yeah, I need you 5 days in Hawaii. Please book a flight. Please book a hotel. Please, you need a rental car in Hawaii. So book a rental car there, go to Hawaii and do 5 days project work for me. And the department manager finds out, hey, my employee is booking a hotel, buying a flight, booking a rental car. My employee? No. So what is such a team member now doing? The project manager says, please go to Hawaii. And the department manager says, no, you stay here. Now the team member is in a situation where a decision needs to be made, and it's a bit unfair, but often they have to make the decision. And in many organizations, they would first follow the department manager. The project assignment is temporary. The department is more or less continuous. When the project assignment will be over, they will be back at their desk in the department. The department manager has the hand on all the files, the personnel files and the HR activities and all these things. They are done through the department, rarely to the project. In many organizations, we have a situation where project managers have big difficulties to get people out of the departments into their projects. And that's what we typically call a weak matrix situation. Weak matrix means the project manager is more in the role of a very weak coordinator. In some organizations, they are called coordinator. And I could have another 2 hours of webinar just on what it means to be a coordinator. And by the way, why to better avoid being such a project coordinator. I think it's a very dangerous role. Availability of project manager, project management team, part-time. In a weak matrix situation, it is normal that project managers are expected to do the project part-time because they have other work to do, daily business, operational work. That's what they need to do. And then somehow they have to share the time between operational tasks and project tasks. I had recently a project manager in an event who currently is doing a chemical plant in a chemical company. And it's a plant, it's the development of a new plant at a value of 75 million US dollars. And part-time, the person was expected to do it part-time. And the project was really in deep troubles because the person managing the project didn't have the time, the energy, the focus, the attention that the project needed because other work needed to be done as well. In a weak matrix, project managers often don't have an own budget. Maybe they have a project sponsor with a budget. Maybe there is no sponsor there at all and no budget there at all. Often there is no budget there. They are just expected to take care of people and of tasks and maybe a schedule and do some risk management and so, but nothing on the budget. They don't have a budget. There may not be a budget there at all. Then when they need new people, when it's about staffing, or when they have to find contractors, subcontractors, subcontractors for the project, they cannot just go out and get them. They have to do this over the HR department, over a procurement department, and so on. They cannot really make own decisions. And when staffing people, when HR people bring them new staff, it may be the wrong people because it was not the project manager selecting them. It was HR selecting them, and they may have different criteria for that. Same thing with procurement. Resource availability, low, unreliable. My example with the person who should fly to Hawaii. What a wonderful place to go. No one can go there. They would love to do that, but their managers would not allow that. And in my example, the department managers were stronger. By the way, that's why we call it a weak matrix. The project manager is in the weak position. We look at the matrix from project management perspective. The reputation of the project manager is suffering here, rather poor. In such a situation, how do you want to be successful with your projects? Not far from my home is the headquarters of BMW, and most of my neighbors are somehow working as managers at BMW. I think 60%, something like that, almost 2/3, is managers at BMW. And I often hear statements like, "Hey, Oliver, if we in production would meet our deadlines as poorly as project managers do that, BMW would be no more existing." I know some people from Mercedes, that's not very far from us, it's 200 kilometers. And when I tell them that, they say, "Hey, that's funny. People here say precisely the same." So at a long time, I thought, hey, what an unfair comparison. The predictable, mostly predictable world of operations versus this very unpredictable world of projects. And at one point I noticed, hey, it's not just an unfair comparison. It is an It is an expression of the low reputation that project managers have there. We at PMI, we think we are the heroes of the world in project management. Operational people sometimes think we are a nuisance. Could there be a strong matrix? A typical case why we may have a strong matrix is customer projects. Just imagine my example with a person has to fly to Hawaii. This would be probably a strong matrix. This would go without discussing it. Of course, the person goes to Hawaii. Several reasons for that. Reason number one, we work under contract for a customer. We don't want to run into a breach of contract situation. Most people, most organizations see contracts as something sacred, which is a good thing, by the way. Yeah. Unfortunately, not all, but that's a sacred thing, a contract, because we know what troubles we will have if we don't meet contractual obligations. Yeah. Another thing is, if we do customer projects, that's how we bring money home. If we don't send this employee to Hawaii, we cannot bill that. We cannot send an invoice for that to the customer. We run into a breach of contract situation. Our income stream will be damaged. It goes without saying, of course, this person goes there because that's how we make money. Strong matrix is very often, not always, very often organizations that live on customer projects. And then the project manager is just the project manager. Sometimes what I see is they're even called program managers. Not because there is a program, but to give the customer a special feeling. No, we don't have a chief project manager here or coordinator. No. We have a program manager here. There's a person that he or she is far better educated and better paid probably, and has an understanding everywhere. So to upgrade the customer impression of what we do, we call this person a program manager. Even in comparatively small projects, project managers are assigned full-time. That's how the company makes money. Of course, the project manager does it full-time, because if the project manager does it part-time, then the income stream to the organization may be damaged. Project managers have an own budget in a strong matrix environment. It's a very simple thing. Think of a fixed price project, for instance. We have a price to the customer of $100 million. We want to keep $20 million for ourselves. So $80 million is the budget for the project. That's a very simple thing. And if the project manager needs new employees, needs new contractors, the project manager goes out and finds them. Maybe HR helps the project manager. Maybe procurement helps the project manager. But the driver's seat is rather the project manager. Resource availability, high, reliable. My example with Hawaii. Of course, we sent this person to Hawaii. That's how we make money. That's how we avoid becoming running into breach of contract. And this raises the reputation of the project manager. Not everywhere. I have to say, this is not a black and white world that we are describing here. It is more about where's the average. Is it more on the strong matrix side, customer projects, or weak matrix side, internal projects? And there are exceptions to these rules. There are many exceptions to these rules, but the rules are there. Actually, my example was a very unfair example. It would have been much fairer that not the employee has to make the decision, that the project manager and the operational manager, the functional manager, sit together and discuss this question. This would be the right thing. And where this works, this is where we have a balanced matrix. My observation is it would be reasonable to have it, but it is rare. It is not something that is common. It is rare. So common for internal projects is rather the weak matrix. Common for customer projects is rather the strong matrix. Weak matrix, strong matrix, balanced matrix. You may know these terms from the PMBOK guide. But why are we in a weak matrix? Why are we in a strong matrix? How is this related to different types of projects? Unfortunately, not discussed in the PMBOK guide. Our customer projects are not discussed at all. 2 little statements on that in the PMBOK guide. I was the 6th edition. I'm still talking about the 6th edition. We just got the 7th edition, and I had already, I'm talking about the 6th edition at the moment. 7th edition is not much different. Clara was working in internal projects, so her strength was to swim in an organization like a fish in the water. Yeah? The left-hand side, the weak matrix, being successful in a weak matrix, being successful without formal power. This was her strength. Yeah? This was what she developed as a skill. Yeah? Stakeholder orientation. We all know these words, servant leadership. She can act and she can discuss, very persuasive, and her social skills are well developed. She has self-control and all those things. Yeah? Things changed when her company fired her from one day to the next. Why did the company do that? The project was outsourced to an external provider. Someone else is now doing the project, and this someone else has a project manager. So the company needs someone to manage the contractor, but no more a full-scale project manager here. Maybe someone who takes care of what is happening there, but the project manager for the entire project, no, it's on contractor side. Without her skills, her knowledge, behaviors, all the things that she has developed, she was made redundant. And by the way, she was made feel redundant. She really felt redundant. She's an intelligent lady, not a stupid lady, of course. So she looks at the market and say, hey, there is something going on here. There's something going on that projects that have been done internally in the past are now outsourced to external contractors. This is a trend, and I will show you this trend a bit later. So can it be that difficult to bring money home with projects? Something we don't really discuss at PMI, unfortunately, but it's a very important topic. And to give you an example for that, this is a survey that I made end of 2016. So we will have to repeat this very soon. I wanted to repeat this already in 2020, but then came COVID. And my impression was there was so much chaos during COVID, particularly last year, summer, fall last year, that it doesn't make sense to make such a survey there because there is no clear direction in there. I think when it will end, and I hope it will end soon, then it will be interesting to repeat this and to see what happens after COVID with its trend. So this is a pre-COVID trend that I'm describing here. Someone has a microphone on and it's a bit disruptive. Could you check that your microphones are all muted? Okay, thank you very much. So this is a pre-COVID survey. I had 590 responses, which is a difficult thing to do today. People are really tired of surveys. But it was a global survey. Yeah? And I asked people a very simple question, actually 2 very simple questions. What is your recent experience about make or buy decisions? And what is your future expectations for the near future where this will go to? And the options were that companies choose make more often or companies choose buy more often. These were the 2 options on a scale from -3, choose make more often very strongly, to choose buy more often very strongly as well. And we see there were responses in both directions. There were responses of what is sometimes called insourcing, bringing money, bringing project work back again. But there's also the side with outsourcing. When the decision in a make or buy decision, the decision is made to buy, to use the buy option, then this will probably become a customer project for another organization. And we see on the right-hand side, this is much, much stronger. The right-hand side is much stronger, which means there is a global trend towards buying more. By the way, I don't have all this data here, but if someone is interested, I can send you the data. I wrote a paper on that. If I break it down in world regions, wherever you look, choose buy more often is stronger than choose make more often. In no world region is the trend going in the other direction, to the left. Everywhere it goes, it's going to the right. I asked for smaller and larger projects, and the trend, wherever you look, is more buying. I asked for projects where there is already a lot of buying done, and where this is just a new trend. And wherever you look, there is a trend towards more buying, less making. That's a worldwide global trend. And when you break it down, you see it happens everywhere. Yeah. So how does Clara respond to that? Clara came to a decision. Whenever buy is chosen in a make or buy decision, a customer project is created for a contractor. By the way, it could be created for hundreds of contractors, with subcontractors, subcontractors, and so on. At least one. I want to run such a project, a profit center. This project is for the contractor, a profit center. She was looking for a job, and these project managers are really seeked at the moment. Companies need project managers who can run customer projects because they have so many customer projects, because so many companies have decided to become a customer. That's the essence of buying in the make or buy decision. I want to become a customer. So on the other side, someone has to go out as contractor and do the business as a contractor. So it wasn't that hard to find an employer. Yeah? And a lot of things changed for her. One of the most obvious things in the past, she had to look after one company. Now she's working for two companies, for the own company, the contractor, her employer, but also for the customer, a different company. You have to look at two companies now, and actually maybe more than two. You could be a subcontractor, so you have to look at the prime contractor and at the customer behind the prime contractor. Yeah. Then she had to bridge disputes, a very typical aspect, unfortunately, of project business management is disputes. The Project Business Foundation, one of our core services is dispute management. Things like ADR, alternative dispute resolution, or project business healing days, where we bring customers and contractors together. They talk about the problems they have with each other, with the goal to resolve them and bring the project back on track. And the focus is the well-being of the project. Yeah? And here are some examples where these disputes are coming from. I will have some data, some number in that later as well, in some more details. Yeah? Including, by the way, big egos. Big egos is such a big problem in project business. Then she was confronted with legal terms, and she had no idea what this all means. Some of the terms she heard for the first time, or she thought that she understands what it means, and it means maybe something different. Yeah? In Europe, we use penalties. You should never ever use penalties in India or in Bangladesh or in Australia or in the US. Also, they are not accepted by courts, and they're not enforceable at courts. So many things she had to look at. Yeah, and then there is a worst case scenario, something that is different in a customer project, in project business, compared with internal projects. The worst case scenario, not very frequent, but it's always the threat is always there. The worst case scenario is if something goes wrong, this can end at court. Yeah? Lawsuits. Yeah? You start the project as partners and you end it as enemies. And by the way, this means the project is in the public environment. Court case, a lawsuit, litigation is done in public, so other people will see what you did well and what you did not so well. Clara spoke to her new manager. Boss, you want me to bring money home with projects? Let's talk about a solution. She needs help, and we will see what kind of help she needs a bit later in this session. Let's have a look at the challenges of doing projects as businesses. In this presentation, our focus is on the contractor side. Actually, what I learned is we have to look at both sides. I wrote a book on that, and my topic originally was to write about the contractor side. And the more I wrote, the more I did research, the more I developed stories and to help people learn from stories, the more I found out we have to look at both sides at the same time, because in a business situation where you have an interface between the two organizations, it is not sufficient to look at one side. You have to look at both sides. I have a similar presentation, by the way, for companies that do a lot of outsourcing more than in the past. So I have a similar thing for the customer side, has about the same length, yeah? And a very similar story there. But our focus today is on the contractor side. I think that's the part that is more important and more relevant for people in Bangladesh. In the end, both are relevant, of course. So let's have a look at this interface. What does it mean to be successful in project business? It means a different thing for the customer and the contractor. For the customer, the most important things, apart from price, of course, but when this has been decided upon, the most important thing for the customer is I want to have reliable vendor performance. When the vendor promises me to give me some resources at a certain point in time, over a certain period of time, or to deliver something to me, then I want exactly that. The right time, the right amount of things, the right quality, also quality of people, by the way. Yeah. So reliability is one thing, and customers are often suffering there. Then they want to have VIP grade service. During the proposal phase, during business development, the customer is promised, of course, go with us. Yes, let us be your contractor, because for us, you will be king. You will be king. Yeah, we will treat you as king. And then when the contract has been signed, the customer finds himself in a waiting line at a supermarket cash desk. Yeah, no more king. Yeah. Sorry, dear customer, that's important to do this for you, of course, but we have two other customers. We have to serve them first, unfortunately, before we can do the work for you. So just wait a bit and we will do it for you. Yeah. So you're no more the king. Yeah. People let you wait. And supply network agility. As a customer, you don't really know what you need right at the beginning. And if you think you know it, you will find out during the course of the project. They may be wrong, that you need something else, or need things differently, need more, need less, whatever it is. We have this all under the term of agility today. The difficulty is you have a contract with a contractor, maybe with a group of contractors. We use the term project supply network if there are many contractors out there. And they have to be agile with you and not block your change requests, your additions to scope, or taking something off the scope or so. You need them to be agile together with you, which is a difficult task. A contractor may say, hey, sorry, we have a contract and we stick to the contract, full stop. If you want to change something, come back tomorrow. On contractor side, we also have some criteria of success. The first one should be the happy customer. That's why we do the business. We do it to make someone happy. I hope so, at least. Yeah. But we have two more things. Profitability. Profitability not in the meaning of greed. Of course, you find this very often. But actually, we're talking about need. You need profit to survive, to pay your employees and your contractors and taxes and insurances and everything else. We need profits to be able to develop a future for the organization. We need profits to have some reserves when things go wrong. So it's about survival. It's about need, first of all. And then protection of liquidity. I have no idea why no one is talking about that. As a contractor, you have to take care of cash flow. Very often you lay out money for your customer in the project. You need the money back in time before you become illiquid. What happens if the customer doesn't pay it back to you at all? Companies go insolvent because of a lack of profitability. Yes, of course. But more often, the reason is a lack of liquidity. And I think most often the two come together. But liquidity is the short-term question. Profitability is something you see maybe at the end of the year latest. But liquidity is something you feel every moment when you have to pay people, when you have to pay contractors and other things. So these are the three things. We want a happy customer, but we need a profit, and we need the profit on time, not coming too late. So these are somehow the two sides that we have. And again, I have a survey for you. Actually, 3 surveys. I asked people, this was my first survey, September 2015. What type of project are you currently managing? A customer project, that's the red part, or an internal project, that's the blue part. I think I would use a different wording today, but when you do such a longitudinal study, you still have to use the old wording to make sure that you can see changes in here and trends in here. And what I had, and some others did the same survey, by the way, they repeated that. And they got similar responses. Roughly 50%. In my cases, even more than continuously, even more than 50% is in customer projects. This is not a fringe aspect of project management, what we are talking about here. This is a core topic of project management. Doing projects for paying customers, doing projects as profit centers is what, let's say carefully, 50% of the project managers out there are doing. It also tells us, together with the other survey, we are in a growing market, in a healthy market, but this market needs some help, as the story with Clara is showing us. And there are big differences whether you do a project for your own organization, an internal project, or you do a project for a paying customer. The most obvious one is an internal project is a cost center. A customer project is a profit center. But you see there are many, many more things in this table. And by the way, the table is not finished here. Many more. And I would not claim that the table is complete. There may be other differences that I was not sufficiently aware of so far. But there is a lot of differences here. It's a different project management, what we have here. Look at management attention. Most internal project managers are suffering from a lack of management attention. In customer projects, you bring money home. Managers want to know, when will we get the money? How much money will we get? They need it not only for budgeting. It is their success that the company is profitable, and the profit comes from the projects. Here, another challenge. Often it's not just one customer, one contractor. At least from a customer perspective, this is described in the PMBOK guide. There's a knowledge, 6th edition, there's a knowledge area on procurement. It's also addressed in the 7th edition. But hey, we have very complex procurement here, and we also have the side of the contractor, which is almost not at all addressed in the PMBOK guide, and by the way, in other literature as well. If you look into literature, it is ignored wherever you are in, at least the books that I know, in all those books. This is ignored. What we have here is a still simple project supply network, a PSN, where we have contractors. Yeah. And one of the contractors is a prime contractor, by the way. This means this prime contractor has subcontractors, and subcontractors may have subcontractors, and so on. There may be hundreds of organizations in the project. The biggest number I heard so far of a project supply network was the development of the Airbus 380. Airbus was my largest customer in the last couple of years. And I asked someone there, in the development of the 380, this big super jumbo, 2 decks inside with passengers, how many companies were involved in that? And the answer was, first of all, we don't know. Hey, that's a dangerous answer. How can you not know who is part of your project? And then the second answer was, we believe it's about 1,500, 1,500 organizations. So if something goes wrong in there, it can damage the entire development process. What we see is we have one direction, how money is flowing, and we have another direction, how deliverables are flowing. And it's a complex scenario. And we have lots of contracts. Each of these interfaces between a buyer and a seller is contractual. And the prime contractor, by the way, is both at the same time. The prime contractor buys from subcontractors and sells to the customer. And you may have prime contractors on the second tier again, and on the third tier, and so on. The world is getting very, very complex. And it's growing, the complexity here. Then why do we have conflicts in project supply networks? I asked people, and interesting, actually from hindsight, I would say obvious, conflicting business interests. Number one problem in project business is we have parties, hopefully partners, working together, and each of them has own business interests. So that's the number one cause of conflicts. I gave them the opportunity, the respondents, to answer on a scale from 0 to 5. Yeah? And this was the longest one, almost 3. Then the next 2, very near together, I think it's almost the same. Yeah? Diversity of cultures, legal systems, moral compasses, you could say organizational differences, and then egos, individual conferences, individual disagreements, individual diversity between these organizations. That's something I remember from my younger days. I was in customer projects more than a decade, and the biggest problem often was my boss and my customer's boss. They couldn't come along with each other. On the level of us in the project, project manager and personnel and so on, we came along with each other very well. But as soon as we had to escalate something, everything went wrong. I had a problem with such an ego. We have some more answers here. By the way, another interesting one down here is default, a party going bankrupt, going insolvent. And another thing that we also have in here is something like corruption. Even this is in here. Dubious organizations, bribery, corruption. I think the world of project business is the world where we have most corruption in the world. It's much easier to hide corruption in a project than in operations. Operations, things go for a long time, and maybe if some corruption is not seen today, it may be seen tomorrow. In a project, the corruption happens today, and tomorrow when someone could see it, the project is already over, or at least this kind of work there has been finished. An example for different business interests. Maybe again, the most obvious one. This is what you have in an internal project. By the way, the customer point of view is the view of an internal project with external resources. But it's first of all an internal project. You do it for your own organization. And typical here is that we have the benefit from the project expected in the future. There are 2 options for that, mostly 2 options. One option is a single delivery. Think of something like a bridge or a tunnel. You build the bridge, when you're done with the bridge building process, with the construction process, you open it to the public, and then the public can use it. So benefit realization follows the project. You cannot work on the bridge when already people are crossing the bridge. That's not possible. So you have to have all work finished, and then you can open it to the public. By the way, there are exceptions to this rule meanwhile as well, but a very traditional bridge construction would go like that. My second example here is such an internal project now with staged deliveries, incremental deliveries, another word for that, where we deliver in increments. Actually, there is a bridge north of New York City which has two spans. They have two spans over a river. First, they built one span, opened the bridge, had only 50% capacity. Then they built the second span, finished the second span, and then they could open the full bridge. One span goes for the traffic to the west, and the other one goes to the east. So now they have two spans. Even in bridges, you can have staged deliveries, incremental deliveries. But even then, the majority of the benefit that is expected to be realized from the project will sit in the future. We start a bit earlier, realizing some partial benefit, but the full benefit and the long-term benefit is obviously in the future. What is it for the contractor? Again, there are some exceptions to this rule. That's not always true, what I'm telling you here. But for the vast majority, the benefit generation for the contractor begins with the first payment from the customer and ends with the last. At least the project benefit realization goes as long as we get paid for our work by the customer. As soon as we have things like warranty also, it's no more benefit realization for ourselves, it's just costs. So that's a huge difference. When are we going to realize our benefits? It's not easy to develop a model here where we have joint goals, joint intentions, a joint project where we feel that this project is our project together. Then from a contractor perspective, a customer project does not begin with a project charter. It begins far, far earlier. You see this process here, we see it begins on buyer side, a typical process. It's again, there are differences to that. There are exceptions to that. But that's the most common process. It starts on buyer side. The buyer made a make or buy decision for a new project. The decision was to buy something. So they send out statement of work together with an invitation for bid, request for proposal, request for quotation, invitation to tender, invitation to pitch, and all the other names that we have for that. They sent that out. And then contractors, and they're still not contractor, by the way. They are at the moment just vendors. They are at the moment just sellers. They make a decision, are we going to make an offer or not? And that's the moment when when project business begins for this vendor organization. At the moment that they make a decision to make an offer, at the moment project business begins for the seller. And now they will probably develop the bid, proposal, quotation, make a pitch, whatever you like, send it to the buyer, which is still not the customer because we don't have a contract yet. And they will have some negotiations, presentations, all these things, talks. And the hope is from the side of the buyer and from the side of the seller to have a contract together. By the way, you see for 2 or 3 sellers, this business ends with a contract because they are not selected. Another one is selected here. So this ends here. All the investment that they did here, is lost. If they do it too often, lose bids. That's one reason that they could become insolvent. Then we have something where we do the project from the customer's perspective. It's contract management, contractor management, if you prefer. From the seller's perspective, they do know the project. At one point in time, this will be finished. All work is done, accepted, approved. hand it over so the contract can be closed out, and this ends project business here. There may be some future business here in form of services and other things, but the project business has been ended at this point. So the life cycle is different to the life cycle that we know from internal projects, which are well described in the project, in the PMBOK guide, where we have a project charter at the beginning and a closeout of the project at the end. It could well be here that the contract closeout comes a month after project closeout. The contract may be closed out later, and often they're not closed out at all, by the way. That's another weakness of reality. We have many difficulties in this model. One of the top difficulties is during business development, the buyer wants to develop business with the seller wants to develop the business with the buyers. During that time, the focus is typically on competing. There's competition between the sellers. Only one of them will get the business. There's also competition between the buyer and the sellers. As a buyer, I want to get as much product and service and other things for my money, for the smallest amount of money possible. As a seller, I want to have as much money as possible for as little delivery service as possible, because the delivery, the service is costs for me. So there is a lot of competition in here. People have to change their competitive behavior immediately at the moment of the contract. If we keep on competing between the buyer and the seller, we will probably not be able to have a truly successful project. I see a lot of examples for that. We have to turn the focus from competing to completing. Nice thing in the English language, nice game, nice play with words. But I think that's an important thing that we have to do here, change our behaviors. How good are people to change their behaviors just in an instance? Can they really do that? I have my doubts that it's easy, at least for them. And the problem is the customer may have different projects in a different status. One project is still in the status of business development. Another one, they already do contract management. They already do the project. And the same may be true on seller side. One project is in business development. The other one, they're just doing it. So they may have two negotiations, two meetings. They leave the negotiation room where they do business development, where they are highly competitive. Now they have to go into another room where they have to focus on the completion of the project. Can they just change their behaviors in some seconds, in a minute or so? I think a lot of people have difficulties with that. They still focus on competing while the project is performed. And this is one of the reasons why customer projects, why project business can run into troubles. Another thing where we have difficulties is this topic with the project supply networks. My personal experience, original experience in project business is from automotive industry. It's from production. And in production, what you today have is relatively voluminous, big supply chains, but the structure is very simple and easy. You keep it very simple and easy. And you have experts in supply chain management. If I speak with a supply chain management expert at BMW and ask them, do you know what the contractor XYZ down in Italy, southern Italy, what they will do next month, the 17th, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, fourth tier subcontractor? Yes, of course they know that. And when it will be delivered to the third tier, to the second tier, what happens there? When will it arrive at BMW? In what numbers? What amounts? In what quality? At what gate? And so on. And this is all planned. They have experts for that. They have education for that. They have certification for that. They have literature for that. They have academic research on that. This is a well-described discipline. I was there, one of the coincidences of my life. I was there when this all began about 30 years ago, supply chain management in the automotive industry, driven by software, by the way, EDI, if someone of you knows this acronym, electronic data interchange, which allowed computers in different organizations to talk with each other. ISO 9000 was a big aspect. We can build quality management systems cross-corporate, and there will be some matching between them, and the quality systems can talk with each other, ISO 9000, to standardize quality management systems. And it was some very, very intelligent people, visionary people around. I remember one of them at Opel, later at Volkswagen, General Motors, later at Volkswagen, who was very much a driving force in that. So this is what we had there. Now, what do we have in project management? We have the same trend 30 years later, but our supply networks are not well structured and easy in their structures. They are highly complex and opaque. No one really knows who is in there. When I asked Airbus, do you know who was part of the 380 development project? No, we don't. So I think that's the normal situation. And often I see very, very surprising effects coming here. It may be your direct contractor is in this network and you're not aware of that. There may be some companies in there that are criminal companies. They do businesses in a way with contents that you do not agree with and that you would never work with, but they are second tier, third tier away from you. You don't know that they are there and you don't want to have them there, but you don't look. We have a consortium here. A consortium in a project supply network is a joint venture on time. Several companies together develop a joint venture just for the project. When the project work will be over and they don't have no business for the consortium anymore, no follow-up business, they may close down the consortium because it has no more justification of existence. Very normal process, very normal process. And this is the other big problem, maybe our biggest problem of all. That's the lack of education. We have some people in project business management who have business management education. They don't know very much about project management. Then we have people who have project management education, which means they don't know very much about business management, which is also part of project business management. And I think the majority of people have no education in either of these fields. They are put in place, take over the project, take care of the customer, take care of contractors and subcontractors and so on. Just do it. By the way, this was my history. Far too young for that. Uneducated for this business. I had no idea where the big problems were to be expected. And again, BMW, I remember a BMW project manager who understood my position and who saw me working for the contractor completely unprepared. And he told me, Oliver, look at the interfaces between the organizations. This is where the problems begin. He was an engineer, not an organizational guy, an engineer. But he had this knowledge, and I will never, ever forget this advice. I think it was one of the best advices that I had in my life. I am not sure that I understood him, fully understood him by that time. Today I do. So what do we have today? Most people in this field learn project business management by trial and error. But there's a problem with trial and error. Trial in customer projects is expensive, and error even more. Error can destroy our organization. It can destroy our entire business if we do things wrong. And I think there are enough examples of project contractors going insolvent all around the world. I did some research on that recently and some analysis on that for Pakistan, for the Belt and Road Initiative from China, where lots of Pakistani contractors went insolvent because they were no more paid their last invoice. The last invoice was not paid. And this was a huge problem for them. All the time, they laid out money for the customer. In a financial perspective, all the time, the project was a loss. The last payment was when they made profit, would have turned the loss in a profit. And this payment didn't come. It was not just profitability that killed them. It was, of course, liquidity. They became illiquid. They could no more pay their own bills. So what could solutions look like? I have one solution here that I like very much. I think it's one of the big things to use a process called benefit engineering. If you have a project in a crisis, a customer project in a crisis, and you have to get it out of this crisis. Reasons for such a crisis: we have a deadline that we cannot meet. Often it's about money. We spend more money for the customer than the customer pays us. The project makes a loss. And many other things. Maybe money comes too late. Maybe that's our problem. We need the money earlier. The customer has a payment term of 2 months and we cannot afford the 2 months anymore. Whatever it is, what can we do to get out of that? If I ask, particularly on the cost income side, if I ask people, what would you do in such a situation? Most people in customer projects say, okay, we have to save some money. We have to make the project cheaper. Unfortunately, there are two big limitations for that. One is the contract, and the other one is the law. It may be illegal to cut corners here. Oh, by the way, a third one is we want a happy customer. This is a good way to make the customer unhappy. There are limitations on cost engineering. There are no limitations on benefit engineering. First, we have to understand where our own problems are. Is it time? Is it money? Whatever is it? Then we have to identify, are there needs of a customer that are at the moment not met anywhere? What are their wishes, their wants? What are the risks, the problems they have? They may not even be aware of them. Or they are aware of risks and problems, but don't have the time to address them. So we find out those things where the customer has a problem, where we can help. Is it a difficult thing to do? It's very, very simple. We are there. We are maybe on the premises of the customer. We look behind sofas. We look under rocks and see things that no one has seen for years, maybe. We open doors that have not been opened for years. We see all the technical things on customer side which go wrong or could go wrong, or where opportunities are not addressed. There is something, the customer can make some money and the customer does not know how. We know maybe. So that's the other thing. We have to look at the customer and look for opportunities to give the customer something that is helpful for them. Then we have to understand where our strengths are. Can we really do it? Do we have capacity free? Do we have resources free to help? Do we have the technology maybe to do that? And we do have to do some own cost benefit analysis. If we add some cost to our project without getting benefit out of this additional work, doesn't make sense. So we have to analyze this all. This means, by the way, project managers need business acumen, business spirit here. This is not the classical software project manager, construction project manager, who is there with blueprints and with numbers and all these things. This is about business acumen and business spirit, something project managers normally do not learn, but they need it in customer projects. Then develop a solution, define it, propose it, sell it to the customer. Now we are salespeople. Maybe sales helps us. It's a good idea that sales supports us here. But on the other hand, we are already with the customer together. There's hopefully a relationship built on, hopefully, trust, cooperation. So I hope they will be open. And by the way, we have no competition here. It's not like the original request for information, invitation to bid, request for proposal, and so on, where we had lots of other organizations and had to ask ourselves, what are they going to do? Here we are alone with the customer. And when it's sold, when the customer accepts it, we have to implement it. Is it easy or difficult to do that? I said already, I think it is very easy today. One reason is you are there, but there is another reason. The major problem of managers today is management attention. I think It is the most important resource in a project. I think, by the way, this is the cause why we have so many make or buy decisions decided along the buy option, because we give it into someone else's hands and they have managers too, and can spend attention to our project. So we reduce this overload on management attention. I have an example here. You see on the left-hand side, this old guy, 1920s or so. Yeah. He had a relatively easy life 100 years ago. He was the boss and the ladies would do what he wants them to do. If you look at this lady here, the impression is she's afraid. Yeah, she's afraid. She's looking up. She's afraid. Yeah. As a man by that time, you could speak nasty words on women and you could treat women in a way that you cannot do today anymore. By the way, that's a good development. Don't misunderstand me here. But it makes life more complicated for everyone. Yeah? And business was much easier by that time. The number of laws you had to be compliant with was small. Yeah? And you had small markets and a small number of competitors and so on. What do we have today? Today, the world is completely different. We have complex markets. We are overwhelmed by legal requirements on us, including environmental things, including data protection, privacy, and all these other things. Yeah? This makes management much, much more difficult today because you have to take care of so many things. Managers, as I see them today, most of them. Can you shut down can you mute the microphone, please? Someone is, yeah, thank you. So many things that we have to take care of today. And this VUCA world with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, you may know this acronym. This is the world that we have today. In the past, the world was predictable most of the time. Back to Clara. She had to learn project business management. And there are two ways to learn that. Learning by trial and error. That's what the vast majority of people in project management, project business management, have gone through. I know some great experts out there. They are very, very good, but they had to learn by trial and error. And actually, it was my own history as well. Many decades ago, I had to try out things and I made a lot of mistakes that I hope I would no more do today. I believe as Oliver Lehmann, and we believe as the Project Business Foundation, it would be much, much better to have professional qualification for project business management. And actually, we do a lot of development work here at the moment. What is all part of that? First of all, of course, literature. Unfortunately, we don't have much literature on that. If we have some people in the audience here who love writing books, please write a book on that. I will bring you into contact with publishers. Yeah. Then another thing is having things like seminars, coaches, consultants, bring them into the organization, do mentoring for these people. I know one organization, they have a mentoring program for young project business managers, not just project managers, project business managers that they use for their customer projects. And they have a mentoring program where the older and seasoned project business managers help the young people grow into this field. What a wonderful, wonderful program this is. We should have that more often. Yeah. So she learned, and she learned another thing, and that's an acronym, and that's a term that I would also like to give you for project business management. What we need is to follow a motto called mission success first. By the way, I stole it from NASA. Yeah, it's a NASA concept. You don't want to talk too much about different business interests and the other things. They are there. You have to understand them. You have to address them. But then your real focus is mission success. Mission success for the entire mission of the project, where the customer, the contractors, the subcontractors, and so on work together, because what they all want together is mission success. It was developed out of programs to send probes to Mars. And NASA had a series of failures in the late 1990s. And then they developed this model that they said, what we do has a basic motto, a paradigm that everyone subscribes to. And this is mission success first. This is the number one thing, the mission success. And since they implemented that, not an easy thing, but since they implemented that, they had a series of project successes after that. Parts of that are good faith. Then again, completing over competing. If we start competing in the project will suffer. And mutual respect of the other parties' business, the partners' business interests in both directions. As a customer, I respect the business interests of my contractor and vice versa. And this is true for all organizations inside a project supply network. This is something we need to develop. Connective leadership across all the organizations involved in the project. So again, our point of view here is the contractor view, to make sure we have the happy customer at the same time we are profitable with our project. And again, this is not greed, this is need. We need the profit, and we need the profit, we need the money on time. That's the liquidity thing. Clara's boss did another thing. He made sure there is someone there whom she can call whenever she WhatsApp or whatever you like, of course, today. She has someone to talk to. I have a problem. I have a situation. I don't fully understand this. I have to do something tomorrow. I have to go to a negotiation, whatever it is. She has a challenge. Now she has someone to ask, hey, how do I meet this challenge? And the two, she and her partner, have to have a common understanding. Mission success first, yes, on both sides. So thank you for listening. And now I am listening to you, to your questions, and I'm happy to answer them, respond to them whenever I can.
Thank you very much, Oliver. What a presentation. Yeah. So I have got, lots of questions for you. I think, so I will start with Mr. Imam Tanveen. He asked basically the make-buy survey you have mentioned in that presentation. Could you share that data? And it is based on which industry and which geographical location and what type of organization?
Can you repeat the question?
I do. This is basically the make-buy survey you have mentioned in the presentation, that he want to know the demographic condition of the survey.
I don't know the demography in matters of age. The difficulty is the more questions you ask in such a survey, the less responses you will have. The thing is, the art is to have a balance, have a very small number of questions and get the interesting information there. And I agree, I thought about that. Asking people for their age would be an interesting thing, but it would have been another question. And when I had it all developed, I shortened it again and I condensed it a bit. So this fell out, unfortunately. I thought other things would be more important. But yes, this would be an interesting question. Is this more something the young people do or something the older people would do? Yeah, that's an interesting thing to ask us.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is Mr. Ghazi Jubaid Jalil. He has two questions basically. That any real life example of solution regarding the big ego you have mentioned. And second one is the cost engineering versus benefit engineering.
Again, I have to ask you to repeat the question, because two questions now.
Okay, the real life example of solutions regarding the big egos.
The what? The
ego. egos, I think.
Oh, the egos, yeah. Okay, so I see. Egos. Yeah, the problem is when you start talking about real life examples, it gets very personal because you're dealing with people who you may not like, and they can damage your project. And when you start complaining about that, they will put it into a very personal direction when you're just talking about the project. So that's the difficult thing here. I had the problem with egos repeatedly, and I think the problem is always the same. You have someone who wants to control an organization. You have another one who wants to control his or her organization. Yeah? And now, instead of bringing them together, connecting the organizations, which would also mean to have the leaders of these organizations connect. Instead of that, they are now going on confrontation, and that's a confrontation that the organizations cannot ignore. They bring down their disagreement into the work that they should do together, and that's the damaging thing in here.
So his second question was cost engineering versus benefit engineering, either difference or similarity.
What was the first word?
Cost engineering.
Cost engineering. That's the opposite. Cost engineering and benefit engineering are opposites. Cost engineering means make things cheaper, cut corners somewhere, take something out, replace something expensive with something cheap. That's cost engineering. And again, there are limitations on that. One limitation is law. One limitation is contract. Maybe your own integrity is also a limitation in here. How far can you go and still look into the mirror? Benefit engineering is mostly, not always, but mostly more about adding something. But it's in a very formalized way. It's not scope creep. Scope creep is informal. It is just happening. It's in a very formalized way. I used it in several organizations, either to expand the contract, or another thing that we had in one organization, we wanted to end a contract, a fixed price contract, where the customer came with new requirements and more requirements and more requirements and so on. And it was all done under, Agile Manifesto. So there is no negotiation about that. Change is welcome. And the project manager of this contractor, by the way, he supported the customer and said, the customer needs more, so let's give it to him, and the price remains the same. And the company, the contractor company, was almost going into insolvency. So they asked me for help, and I asked them, do you have a deadline? And they said, yes, there is a deadline. Whose deadline is it? Is it the deadline of the customer or of the contractor? No, it's the customer's deadline, a legal deadline they had to meet. And I recommended to them, okay, tell the customer no more new requirements, otherwise you cannot meet the deadline for the customer, but make a second project out of that after this project, where you put in all those change requests and additional features and so on. Make a project out of that to expand that. So benefit engineering was developing a second project to give the customer all the benefits that would no more be able to be made inside this deadline time, the time that they had until the deadline, and particularly to help the contractor out of this very nasty situation. Agile people sometimes say money for nothing and change for free. This works over a certain period and a certain number of changes. But what happens when the number of changes gets overwhelming and destroys your business? In this case, it was easy because they could use the deadline. Actually, it was one of the simplest situations that I ever had in my life to get a customer project out of a crisis. But they didn't see that. So benefit engineering, there may be different ways we do that, but the idea is to give the customer additional benefit so that you have an additional benefit as well. In this case, make a second project out of that. So this would be an example for benefit engineering. You have to look at people. Do you have the people for that? Do you have the time for that? What flexibility does the customer have? If you are in a government environment, it may be illegal to do something like that. So there may be some limitations, some constraints you have to look at. But apart from that, as long as the customer goes with you, there are no limitations there.
Okay.
I hope this answered your question.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So, another question is from Muhammad Sagir. He asked that how can risk management or liquidity protection can be measured, or how can be protected in agile-based project management?
I think in project business management, for both sides, customer and contractor, both sides, risk management becomes extremely important, because project business is high risk business for all parties involved. Another thing where I don't understand why people don't talk about that. We talk about high risk business. It's not like a bookstore. Yeah, you sell books, and if people are unhappy with the book, okay, they're unhappy with the book. They're not unhappy with the bookstore. You know? They're unhappy with the author of the book or the publisher or whoever it is. But they don't have a problem with the bookstore, because the bookstore was just handing over the book against money. It doesn't have responsibility for what they hand over. If we are in project business, we are responsible for everything that is done for the customer, and we can suffer from things that go wrong on customer side. One of the big risks that we have as contractors is poor project management on customer side, and vice versa. Of course, this works in both directions. So we are there together for sometimes quite a long period of time. It's temporary, but it may be still 1, 2, 3 years. And we get more and more dependent on each other. The longer the project goes, the more you become dependent on the company that you're working with. So we have to do risk management and ask ourselves, what can go wrong, and what can go wrong on the other side, and how can it impact us, and how can we respond to that? And we need contingencies, we need fallback plans, and many other things. But we will often see the longer we work together, the harder it gets to respond to these risks. I remember in an engineering company, when I worked in an engine company, in an engine project, we had a contractor going insolvent when our product was almost finished. A component for the machine was almost finished, and we paid it 93, 95%, something of that. We paid that already, and then the company went insolvent, and the component that was made for us became part of the insolvency estate. This means someone else has now the hand on that. It was a lawyer who took over this insolvency business, and we couldn't even go there and take it home. Yeah? We could have said, hey, we have paid it mostly, yeah, let's pay the rest and take it home. This would have been criminal to do that. So we had to wait until the insolvency estate was then sold out, and we had to buy it again. We had to pay a second time for that. It was a bit cheaper than the original price because no one else was interested in that, but we needed this part urgently, and I think we were 9 months late with our machine. Yeah? And the reason was the insolvency of the contractor. So we see where these many risks are. It's not just project risks now and high-level risks, as we have it in the Plumber Guide, summary risks and so on. It's the business risk which adds to traditional project risk. We have project risk and business risk both together, yeah? And they do not add up; they multiply.
Okay, thank you very much. So as we are in a very time constraint, I will ask Mohib Bhai to ask his live question, because he was pinging me for a live question. So Mohib Bhai, the last floor is for you.
Hi Oliver, this is Mohib. I'm from Wichita, Kansas right now. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation and PMI on this chapter. Your presence is a signature to how well we are growing as a chapter, and we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I like the fact how you integrated project management with supply network, and I believe it is much needed thought process, but not very much published yet. You mentioned something about working in Audi or BMW, where they have the project connected to tier 2, tier 3, even tier 4 project. Is that true?
The tendency in automotive industry, not only, but I think this was the driving force. This was the one at beginning, and then others followed. The tendency there was over several decades to outsource production. We're not talking about projects at the moment, we talk about production. Yeah? Okay. Component production and part production and so on. And if you go back 30, 40 years, the typical situation in automotive industry was you did things at home. You did things in your own factory. If you needed something new, you made that. If a production manager wanted to buy it from outside the organization, the person had to justify that. They had to bring a justification. Why are they not going to do this by themselves? Why will they buy this from outside the organization, from a supplier? By that time, there was a term for that called the extended workbench. You may never have heard that. Extended workbench is we have a workbench at home, and we have an extension which goes into the premises of the contractor. If you work with automotive today, it's the opposite situation. If you want to do something in your own company, in your own factory, you need some products there, some components there, and you want to do it at home, you have to justify, hey, there are so many contractors out there. Why do you want to do this at home? Hand it over to a contractor, let them have all the hustle and all the difficulties. We pay them for that and get the results back more or less finished. So it works the other way around today. You have to justify to do things on your own. This was a process over roughly 3 decades, I think. If you look at projects, we are in a similar process today across all industries. Some are more mature in that, construction maybe, infrastructure. Others come later, like software. But they all go the same direction that automotive and other production environments have gone over 3 decades, 3 decades ago, if you like. But we have nothing of those things that they had to support this process. We just do it without any support, education, literature, and so on. So what I say is we have to develop the same maturity that the production people have. We have to develop the same maturity for our projects. Otherwise, we will fail.
Yeah, excellent thought. And I strongly believe that project and supply chain network should connect in a way, and there should be more research and literature being published.
Yes.
Currently, I'm working at Wichita, Kansas as a PhD researcher. Wichita is an aircraft company, air capital of the world. We have 4 or 5 aircraft company. And I see there's a big cost savings if you connect your project or fleet of project, like production of aircraft, to the supply chain network and do the scheduling. There's going to be a lot of money saving as well.
Yes.
A lot, like in terms of billions. So this is where I'm working towards. Now, definitely that information can be trickled down to other smaller size production and supply chain network and project network. And we'd love to connect with you and stay connected because your thought process are so forward going, and we really appreciate that. So I think me, including others, have already sent you LinkedIn connection to connect with us. And on behalf of PMI Bangladesh as a member, I thank you for being here and presenting.
Thank you very much too. Thank you for allowing me to be here and present here.
Okay, now back to the host, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Faiz bhai, if you have a quick question, then we can actually attend you.
There was one question that I saw in the chat, just passing by. I don't know if I find this anymore, which was an interesting one, by the way. This was the question about Can I find it again? There's so many questions here. Oh yeah, there was a question about certificates. Please be patient. I cannot tell you more at the moment, but please be patient. Project business manager, is this the same as
project consultant? Yeah.
Consultant. This was a question that was a very interesting question. Some of the players in a project supply network may not be a project supplier, project vendor, project work and result vendor at all. Some of them may be consultants or trainers like me. I was in a lot of projects as a trainer where something needed to be rolled out over the project, maybe across companies, and they needed a trainer. They had some processes and rules set up, and now someone had to make sure that all contractors are aware of that. So they needed a trainer for that. And by the way, the development was done by consultants, so they were also part of the project supply network. If you do software development, you may have freelancers working as developers, as software designers, and so on in your project. So part of this business is either self-employed consultants, trainers, designers, and so on. But of course, it's also consultancies. Interesting question. If you have a problem with your business, you have consultancies around. You can go to Capgemini from France or KPMG or whatever the names are, yeah, and they will help you. If you have a problem in a project with a customer, where is the consultancy who knows about that, who has knowledge about that, who has people who have shown that they do not only understand standard processes and operations and production and so on, that they understand what project business means, because a lot of things are different. Oh, by the way, back to the question of certificates. For that, we have a certificate. We have a certificate for an ACE, that's the Approved Consultant and Educator. We thought the first thing where we have to develop something in project business, we means the foundation, project business foundation. We wanted to start with education. We did not want to start with the practitioners. They are important, of course, but first we thought we need educators and we need consultants in this field. And that's where we started. It was our first offer that we had to help individuals, help organizations become certified for project business. And there is no exam in that. It's a going through a learning process, a self-driven learning process. And at the end, if we are happy with your results, then you are ACE. We have a badge for that, of course. We have it behind the name, 3 letters, ACE. But that's what we have for that. We still have to do similar things for practitioners, but for the skill builders, we have this already.
Yeah, great. I think Faiz bhai, just go on, please.
Thank you, Rafael bhai. Thank you, Mr. Oliver, for giving your valuable time to us to Bangladesh chapter. Actually, this is not a question. Actually, this is I want to share some experience, my experience with you. In Bangladesh there is 2 big projects going on. One is for the bridge, and another is for the rail project. And in that case, what I have found, Bangladesh Railway is the principal organization for the rail project, and for the road project, Bangladesh Road Authority is the principal organization. They have signed a EPC contract with different vendors like China Major Bridge for the bridge construction, and for rail, that is CREC. And CREC actually a G2G project. And for supervision, they are calling it for supervision. Actually, supervision is not in sense of the product objective only. They are also supervising the project objective, like the schedule, cost, and others. And after what I have worked with them for 3 to 4 months as a consultant, project management consultant. Actually, what I have found, they have recruited they call it quality assurance, like project quality assurance. This sorts of term they are using. After recruiting the main supplier, or the what should I say, the main product developer like China Major Bridge and CREC, they have recruited the assurance party, that CSC, Bangladesh Army. And Bangladesh Army, on behalf of the Bangladesh Railway or the Bangladesh Road Construction Authority, they are following the work of the supplier. But there is a dual reporting here, like what we have found in Matrix. Like when CSE, the project assurance party, is facing the difficulties with the vendors, and they are reporting to the principal organization. Here is Bangladesh Railway, and Bangladesh Railway again asking the explanation to CRSC. And as it is a G2G project, they are coming up with a lot of excuses and others. And the proper assurance, or whatever I say, the objective is not is very difficult for this CRSC or assurance party. So what I felt with when I am working with them, what I've suggested them actually, I suggest them that the project assurance, here is the CSE party, they should recruit fast, and under that, with the supervision of this, they're calling whatever the quality assurance. I am using this term, but what I found, this is shorts of what you are telling now, the project business. I can correlate this to very easily. So what my suggestion was with them actually, you should recruit the quality assurance party fast, and with their consultant, you will go for this contract selection or vendor selection, whatever. And the reporting structure should be going through this quality assurance party. Otherwise, when the assurance party is asking to purify something, and when the principal organization, after getting this notification, they are again going to this supplier and asking, and they are showing a lot of excuses, and it is actually time consuming, and project is getting delayed. So what is your suggestion about this type of work actually? Should the principal organization like the GOV or other organization recruit the project consultant first or the vendor first?
That's a good question. I think that's very situational. I would probably want to have the consultants first, because they should be part of the process, and I would hope that the consultants follow this mission success first approach, that they help us implement that, and the vendors will then follow that. But I think what you're describing, there is a much deeper underlying problem. I would say it's mostly about misunderstandings. There's a different understanding what this project is about on the contractor side, on the customer side, maybe subcontractors as well. They all have a different understanding what this is about. And you cannot be successful if people have different understandings. So what I would focus there on as early as possible is to get misunderstandings out of the project. There are many very specific things on the project, like here in your example, this was government project. So it's about maybe government processes and processes in private organizations. And there may be very specific troubles here. But a lot of what we have in misunderstandings is just about terminology. It's just about making sure that we use the same terminology. And when we do that, then we can go the next step and make sure that all those things that are specific for the project that are also changed. Let me give you a quick example how we can address this topic of misunderstandings. This here is another offering of the Project Business Foundation, by the way. This is something we developed, which is a glossary. It's called the Project Business Glossary. And the idea is, if you take this maybe as a baseline, maybe you have to add your own terminology to that. Maybe you want to take something out or want to redefine something. That's nice. Use it for that. Use it in a way that it helps you define a common meaning across all your project partners, customer, contractor, subcontractors, and so on, that they use terms identically, that they don't use these terms differently. Or if there is some discussion on the meaning of specific terms, then you can say, hey, We have a standard for that. We have a glossary for that. Let's have a look what the glossary says on that. I found personally, when I worked with the PMBOK guide, I found the glossary aspect of the PMBOK guide the most helpful thing. I talked with consultants from other organizations, with customers, with contractors, and often we had difficulties to just come out at the same language. And then if it was about a term and it was defined in the PMBOK guide, then I could tell people, hey, sorry, this is our standard that we agreed upon. We should use the standard here. And the discussion was over. We don't have this so far for project business management, or didn't have that. So that's why I developed this glossary. And my recommendation is to use it in contracting, to put an appendix to the contract. And again, you don't have to stick to that 100%. If you want to change things, use it as a baseline. It makes life easier to use that. And this is my recommendation. And then when you discuss terminology, you may find out that there, by the way, it's quite big meanwhile. Then you may find out, hey, it's not just about terminology. It's also about the understanding how we are going to work together, what we are going to do together, to achieve together. And then focus on these misunderstandings. This is what we do when we run Project Business Healing Days. We bring the organizations together, representatives of the organizations together. We discuss all those things where they have conflicts. In an understanding, there is often not just a right or wrong. Sometimes there is, of course, but often it's just different views of the same thing. If we can unify that and then make it clear what is the mission success of the project, what constitutes mission success of the project, and what can all the participants do together to ensure this mission success and to make sure it's the mission success of the project and it's also their personal success. How do we bring them together? In the end, it's about removing misunderstandings. It's about addressing and resolving misunderstandings between the parties in a very positive way. You may need a facilitator, by the way. Often, if you have conflicts, like as you described it, the parties alone are not able to resolve that. Often, they need a third party to resolve that, because you need a third party to identify the misunderstandings and to resolve them. And hey, this is consultant business. This is business for thousands of people in the world, I think, could do this kind of business. They have to learn it. They have to get the understanding, where do things go wrong? And you can make a business out of that even.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I hope this answered your question. Did this answer your question?
Yeah. I got my answer. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. So I'd like to thank Oliver for attending such a beautiful webinar for us.
Oh, nice.
And it's a token of appreciation from us. I also like to thank you, because I am in a very shortage of time, and I would like to all the participants to show their faces in video so we can take a smile along with Oliver. And I think it is not the last time that we are hearing from you. We will continuously will be hearing from you too in future.
I have some good news, by the way. It's now 2 PDUs, not just 1.5. It's 2 PDUs now.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen it anyway. Second is that I have seen lots of participants here, including my past and present presidents, current and former board directors. And I would like to extend my thanks to my volunteer team, my board of directors, who are very, very encouraging me to work a little bit more. So I am also pushing myself there, and all the participants who are actually joining here. So let's have a party for us and a smile. So So I think it's done, or who is taking it? By the way, Jackie, did you take it?
One last note, or two last notes. First of all, I put my LinkedIn contact into the chat. So if someone is interested, please connect with me. You can ask me questions directly then. And another thing is, if someone is interested, I'm happy to give you the slide deck of today. So if someone wants to have a look at that again.
Yes. Okay. So that will be great. That will be great.
Good.
So wishing everyone good night. See you in the next webinar, and a very special thank to Oliver to have your time, and it has been more than half an hour late almost, so you are still with us. That's a great commitment. So thank you very much, sir. See you soon. Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.